Welcome, paranormal enthusiasts, to this week's episode of We're Creepin' It Reel, here on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, where everyone comes for their paranormal fix. Real people, real stories, in real time. So glad you could join us for some ghostly gab. I'm your host, Eleanor Wagner.
As always, I appreciate you hitting the subscribe tab, follow button, or show app on your podcast of choice. Everybody give a hello shout out to our Coast to Coast techie, Chris Mabry. He'll be working hard tonight to help us run smoothly. Remember, we welcome audience participation, so be sure to go to the actual Coast to Coast feed to comment on the chat line so we can get your questions and be able to answer them accordingly. I'm so excited to introduce today's guests, who are from my own Lady Ghostbusters team out of Sussex County, New Jersey. Please join me in welcoming Art and Liz Peterson. Hi, guys.
Hi.
How you doing?
So much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you haven't always been the Lady Ghostbusters paranormal team. At one point in time, you had your own team and you called it Destination Purgatory. You came up with that name, Liz, didn't you?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Where did that come from?
Well, I guess from watching all those shows like Destination Fear and Ghost Adventures. I just like the name Destination, and then Purgatory was different. So
Well, it definitely was. It definitely was. Did you create the team because of your affiliation with the Burn Brain Mansion in Glen Spey, New York?
Yeah, I would say we had enough interest basically in tours that were starting over a period of time where it really became apparent that we should form a team. So we could do a kind of a formatted tour, so to speak, from so many different, things about the place that I decided to put together a basically kind of like an itinerary that we would go through in a given night and bring everybody from, some ghost stories to introduction to the house, dinner, then, walk through the house, then a trip to the graveyard and back. And then largely we would do the lockdowns after we get back from the graveyard. Various machines, gadgets, things people would set up, record everything, and then see if we get anything back. Everybody would have a digital recorder for EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon, and we could see if anything would come through. So it became this, kind of regular thing for, I would say, about 4 years, I'd say.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, that gorgeous historic landmark, the Burn Brain, was built in 1907 by Margaret McKenzie as part of the estate of George Ross McKenzie. We're going to put the picture up and give picture credit to the Burn Brain Mansion website so everybody could see what that looks like. Look at that amazing building. It's one of only 3 family mansions still remaining. The mansion has been through 5 owners since the Elkins. Over the years, it has served as a boarding house, tea room during Prohibition, and a bed and breakfast. Current owners, Mike and Pat Fracey, have lovingly restored the building to its former glory, bringing back many of its original elements. They currently operate it as a bed and breakfast along with a 12-room motel on the site of the former stables. The last 2 owners, whose combined ownership spans more than 4 decades, and their many guests have all reported unexplained occurrences such as doors opening and slamming, children's voices, balls bouncing, and apparitions of a woman and 2 men. Ghost animal sounds, and organ playing, smell of baking, and sounds of classic music abound. And the residual haunting of an elderly couple who passed in the home, replays of them playing chess by the big window. That's some history. How did you come to connect with Burnbrae Mansion, Art and Liz, and how long ago was it?
So it was with our friends Sue and Andy invited us to come up. Sue's parents bought the place, renovated it, bought it in 92, going into 92, 93. The father restored it to its former glory to the best that he could. Some structural changes were altered radically over the last 50 years, but what he did was he found some of the old stained glass that was removed from the dormers on the third floor, and they were in the basement. Luckily, the one owner saved everything. They had taken everything. They took a dormer style roof and turned it into kind of a straight shed type of facade in the front. And then I did scallop siding on it back in 96 to kind of bring it to where it looks now. But it was a little bit different looking on the very top than it is now, especially in the back. They had different facades, parapets and stuff. So, but the restoration, as they were doing it, they started to get some positive responses in the house. People had, noticed things happening. The owners just before them, the wife had basically run into a lot of issues with stuff just happening to her, almost as it was directed at her. And they had altered the house to turn it into a boarding house, which was really awful for a mansion of that stature to be turned into simply a boarding house. All of their ornate moldings and mantles and columns were all hidden in regular 2x4 walls. It was turned into just hallways and stuff. Mike had to demolish all of that to uncover the incredible grandeur of what was behind it, and then restore it back to what he could. And then he took the stained glass and reinstalled it in the backside of now what's the dining room. So
it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So
what have you done paranormally over there over the years?
Well, I would say the first of the things that started to happen was in the very first year of being there. We had the son-in-law, Andy Russ, would run a haunted hayride feature out in the woods, which is basically, we call it the maze for us that work there. And it's about, I'd say, of the 28 acres, I would say it's about 12 acres of forest dedicated to basically just scenes set up for a haunted hayride. So there was originally two parts to the original hayride. There was an abbreviated hayride in the first probably 7 acres, I guess, and then go out into this horse pasture and then go to a lower, another about 6 acres that they would turn into this horseshoe with a truck that would drive around to different scenes. They would light up as they pass by. They come all the way back up the horse field and come back up to the lower stables to the mansion.
And the two of you dress up in costume and everything during this event, right? And it's around Halloween or something, right?
Oh yeah. So we would play various characters, and it would be a lot of fun. So dressed up,
sounds like it.
Makeup, scary stuff, the eyeballs, with the red eyes. Then later on it came the glowing yellow snake slit eyes, and then the white eyeballs, fangs, blood, gore, death. Really hyped the place up. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, I know you guys do that every single year, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like a given. Yeah,
right.
That's fun. Well, you and I met at Burnbrae when I went there for an overnight investigation with girlfriends of mine in, I think it was 2017. And afterwards, we kept in touch and reconnected for the Sterling Hill mining investigation in Ogdensburg, New Jersey in February of 2019. We three have been together ever since that point. But I remember that Burnbrae event vividly. My daughter Tori came along with me, and she was my roommate because I knew I wasn't going to want to stay in the room by myself. I was going with friends, but they were friends that knew each other for a really long time. So I was kind of like the newbie. So they were going to stay in the same room together, and I was going to be by my lonesome. So I was like, Tori, come with me so I won't have to stay in this room by myself. And quite honestly, we really didn't get much sleep that night. Can you give a little bit of inside information on the backstory and the history of the place over the years, and include the Ellie story, because I love that one?
Well, let's see. Lizzie, give it a little shot at that from what you know.
Yeah, she's the historian. She's the one who knows all the history stuff. She does that homework. So go for it, girl.
So, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot to choose from.
There's a lot to choose from. So, how old is Ellie? Like 5 years old, 6 years old?
Five gonna be.
I think she was 5 going on 6. Yeah.
Yeah. She's one of the spirits in the house. Up in the upper hallway on the what is that? Servants' quarters.
Yes.
Up there.
Mm-hmm.
She's seen up there. She if you put like a toy or a ball up there, she'll push the ball down the hallway, or she'll make something happen with the toy. And then there's a nurse's ghost up there, like a nanny. She took care of like the young children. One of Mike Frazie's, he used to run a bicycle clinic there during the summer. And the kids that came up there, this one kid, Chris, said he heard a woman crying sitting. There's like a step up to the bathroom in the servants' quarters. And he in the middle of the night, he was sleeping and he opened his door and he saw the woman sitting on the step crying outside the bathroom door.
Well, what is Ellie's story? What was the history behind her passing?
We think it was an accident. Like we think that maybe her grandfather was mad at her and he shook her too hard, and that's what we think. But
yeah, the evidence pointed to something that if it was a younger child, it would have been known as shaken baby syndrome. But the thing is, when kids cry out and they basically look for attention, this is way back 100 years plus. So your senses of discipline were administered then, where kids basically were supposed to be seen and not heard. So I would imagine something happened where the grandfather was left to look after the kid, and the kid got either rambunctious, too loud, or maybe had a temper tantrum or something. And the guy shook her severely. Well, what happened later was within 3 days of the incident, she ended up passing away. And then local papers tried to pass it off as some sort of like flu or, a disease or something that she suddenly became stricken with. But the reality of it was mostly symptoms of a shaken baby syndrome, but of a kid who's actually about 5 years old at the time. And basically had injuries to the neck, brain, everything. I mean, a child that's that small is very fragile.
Well, from what I remember, the grandfather wasn't a really nice person anyway. He had a pretty scary back history himself. So it wouldn't be surprising if he had been a little roughhousing going on with him and her at that point that caused her to suffer. Well, for the listening audience, while we were there at Burnbury Mansion that year, Art's paranormal team created this black room, or a dark room for lack of a better description. And they set up these cameras and called in people 2 at a time. And at one point there was a couple in there trying to connect with spirit, but the spirit in there kept asking for Ellie. And that's my childhood nickname. And that was something that I made a point of saying out loud when I first walked in the door. I said, "Hi, Ellie. My name is Ellie too." So I wanted her to know that she and I were one and the same. And the team called in Tori and I to the room, and we tried our hands at connecting with that spirit of the little girl, Ellie. I don't know if you remember that, but we do have the footage from that particular session. If you'll roll the footage, Chris, it's when we were in that dark room and we connected with Ellie.
We were in the woods a little while ago, hoping we could hear you giggle and hear you sing.
Go ahead.
Tori likes to sing.
I love to sing.
So do I.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what do we sing? What do you want to sing? What about Hushabye Mountain?
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gentle breeze, right?
Yeah. Gentle breeze
from Hushabye Mountain, softly flows our lullaby day. I don't know the rest. Winds a sail, so softly are flying. Soon they will fly when your worries away. Oh yeah. So close your eyes on Hushabye Mountain. Wave goodbye to the cares of the day.
Wow.
But they didn't show the part where she says, my name is Ellie, because she does say, my name is Ellie. That part used to be in the video. I don't know why it got taken out of it. But I remember vividly sitting there and feeling like something happened, like we were actually connected, because we also did Ring Around the Rosie, because that was something that was very familiar with the children of the time. And I told her that I worked in school with young children of her age. Like I was trying to do whatever I could to connect with her age group and with her. And apparently we had connected with her, and she did say, my name is Ellie. And normally under those circumstances, when you're doing something like that, you won't hear it in real time, but when you listen back to the footage later, you'll hear it. And they had gotten that footage and had put it on there at one point. And I remember sitting there going, oh my God, she said, it's me, Ellie. It was just so exciting to hear that she had said that. But I know, Art, you had a very peculiar thing happen to you personally, and a great photo came out of that experience. Can you please tell us what happened with the guest who was held down?
Oh, that was not obviously not the time that you were there, but it was a time,
right.
A different time. We had 3 different paranormal teams that came up to do an investigation on one weekend. So Mike, the owner, comes up to me. I was working down below by the stables, and he said, hey, we got some teams up here. Just come up, have a chat with them at dinner time. Give them some pointers, a heads up, some stuff to expect without, giving up too much. So I said, all right. So I came up for supper. I basically said, look, there's a lot of spirits that are in the house as it is. But the most activity out of the years of different teams having been in there was if I took teams on a tour of the graveyard first. Either we walk through the woods or we drive there. When we first started doing it, we walked all the way through the woods and then basically walked all the way back. But that was pretty involved. So this team with her 2 other team friends, we all went out, walked through the woods, showed them all the different spots of our haunted trail. And then it exits onto a road called the Hollow Road behind the actual mansion. It's adjacent to High Road. Right? So about a quarter mile down is the actual Glen Spey graveyard. So there's 2 parts of the graveyard. There's the old, and then there's the new. The old is way up on a plateau with cedar trees. So all the cedar trees, we have yet to figure out if they did the burials first and planted the trees afterwards, or how did they bury these people in a grove of cedar trees? Because you go anywhere around a tree, you're going to run into roots if you're digging. So we think that they were planted deliberately after the first so many rows of people were there. Probably maybe 100, 120 years ago, they started planting the trees, so they're small. So the original plots, the original plots were at the far end of the plateau from the late 1700s, early 1800s, all the way up to where the clearing happened, where the Mackenzie Monument is with George Ross Mackenzie himself. So, so what I would do is I would do stories about different people that were in there. So I would show the teams what's what. But anytime we would do a full sweep of the upper plateau and then come back to the house, especially if we walk through the woods, all of a sudden the whole woods would come alive. People would follow me as I was walking, with their phones on with the camera settings, and all of a sudden you'd have Orbs Central following me like a whole parade of orbs. So it became active from that point. As soon as I crossed over into the Hall of Pines, the exit trail coming out of the woods, as soon as you come back into the Hall of Pines, hit the lower property below the stables and start to approach the bonfire area, the stables, the maze, and you're still below the mansion. If we'd walk all the way up to the mansion, then the whole mansion would come alive. I mean, every single time it happens. So I did this, and I just said, look, the house is going to come alive once we do this whole tour.
It was like a trigger.
Yeah.
It was like a trigger of some sort, right?
I have
A trigger.
spirits that are at that graveyard that are not normally in the house, that follow back, and they hang out in the house for the duration of the night, usually. So we've had a dark entity that had been seen and felt by different peoples over the periods of time. And not everybody sees it, and it's not attracted to everybody. It basically singles certain people out for some reason. So this one team from Massachusetts, a friend of mine, Gina, was there, and we went down, we came back, and I said, look, whatever happens in the overnight, whatever you guys catch on your recordings, your EVPs, let's convene at 9 o'clock at the dining room table, and let's review your evidence. Let's see what you got, see if anything happened overnight. And I told him, I said, usually when you go down and back from the graveyard, the whole house has a lot of activity. So they agreed. We all did that. Brought them back to the house. They did their overnight lockdowns. They had all their gadgets, their recorders, everything. They paired off into different rooms and did, extensive recording throughout the night. So by the next morning, I was staying down below in the stables. I came back up. Morning breakfast is at 9. I told everybody to convene at 9 o'clock and we'll compare stories, see who got what, if anything. So the first couple teams were there, but the third team wasn't, and that was Gina's team with her friend. And they had basically gotten, the Mackenzie suite in the overnight, which is directly over the dining room. So it was a little after 9. I said, anybody go up and get Gina? And everybody said, no, she's supposed to come down. We don't know what's the holdup. So all of a sudden, right overhead, we're at the dining room table. You hear all of a sudden commotion, boom, boom, boom in the ceiling overhead. Then you hear more boom, boom, boom again. You hear a scream. Then you hear another scream. Then you hear a door open, and it's Gina screaming my name out. Art, you got to get up here. So I was like, uh-oh, something happened. So I break away from the dining room table, go up the grand staircase, go all around second floor, fly down the hallway to the Mackenzie suite, and I walk in, open the door. Gina's teammate was sitting on the little couch love seat across from the bed with her feet up in the air. And she's rocking back and forth. And she's like, something's holding me down. I can't move. I can't move. And she's grabbing at her chest. And Gina has the sense to go grab her iPhone, which had a FLIR camera attachment to it. And she had it on. She turned with her back to me. You see her grab the hand, with the left hand with the phone, show it right at the woman, and then clicks off this image, this FLIR image of a dark entity holding this woman down by her chest. And the dark signature
and
shows.
We have that picture. You shared that picture with us. We have it tonight, right?
Yeah.
All right, Chris, why don't you show us that picture?
All right.
Does
he have it? There it is. That's it. So look at the dark entity. So the dark entity clearly is not something living. It's throwing off no heat signature, but its presence is there by the sheer amount of cold that it amasses. And you can see what looks like its left arm holding this woman's chest down. And she is flipping out. And she's rocking. So as Gina's in front of me, and this woman is to the left because she's on the love seat, and the love seat's on the left, and I'm walking in. So what I do is I look over and I see the camera and I see the thing holding her down. It turns, it looks at me, and I look over right at her, but I'm looking to the left of her where this thing is, and I yell at the thing to let her go. Scream real loud, forceful. Finally, the thing lets her go, and all of a sudden, the darkness, with the eyeballs and everything, just dissipates. All of a sudden, she kicks. Now she's able to get forward. She grabs her bag, jets out the door all the way down the hallway, flies out the stairs, runs past everybody at the dining room, says, I'm out of here.
That was it.
Right out the dining room
my
door,
goodness.
That was
slammed
it
the
for
door
her.
wide open, and waited in the car and told Gina she's never stepping foot in the house again.
Oh
Some
my God.
colorful
Well,
language was there, so it was a lot.
tell the listening audience what your capabilities are. What are your abilities that you were able to actually see this thing?
So for me, I can see I'm a clairvoyant, which means I can see scenes from the past. I can see scenes being relived, like residual energy. You know, say if a major event happened at a place, I can see the event being relived over and over again by whatever spirits are kind of stuck in a sort of limbo, I guess, they're just not passed over, they're not passed on, they're stuck reliving whatever this torturous end is that they went through. So I see that as a clairvoyant. As a psychic, I would say that I have people who feel things and then want to convey them, and I can basically see their minds for what they try to project, you know, or like telepathy and so on and so forth. And also between being a psychic and a clairvoyant, I've also predicted events that, you know, were going to happen, and pretty accurate about so many of them. So, and then as an empath, I feel everybody's emotion. I feel their trauma, their pain, their angst, their desire, their happiness. So I walk into a room and all of a sudden something's being projected at me. It's because somebody, whoever's there, the presence, is seeing me as a vehicle to suddenly express their emotion or their sentiment on some level. And then they're like, hey, this guy can hear me and see me. So this is something, you know, that I'm able to do to go to a place. Now, not every place has a live spirit that's hanging out, that's looking to communicate with somebody. And you can usually tell a lot of stuff that you feel is residual energy from an event that may have happened. So I'm able to pick up on events that once have happened, but are not actively seeking someone to communicate with. So that's essentially, you know, the extent of my abilities. Telekinesis is also another thing, able to move things, you know, with my mind, you know, but it's moreover able to see objects that are about to move. Like a little while ago, I was able to predict my phone was going to ring about 3 seconds before it did, and then it did. So that happens to me virtually every single day. So these are different abilities that I've got.
This coming August, our team will be going back to Burnbury Mansion for our very own Lady Ghost Burst of Investigation with a bunch of guests in tow. And I really can't wait because it's been a while since I've been back there. And I had such a really good experience that first time. I can't wait to see what happens when we go back.
Right.
In 2019, I wrote about the sea captain's house in Vernon, New Jersey. Chris is going to put up the picture that I took of the outside of the building. I had actually used a photo that I took of the inside of the captain's house for the cover of my Sussex County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena book. He's going to put up that cover too for everybody to see.
Right.
The sea captain's house is part of the Vibert property and part of the original Winans Tabard property. Yes. And Horace Vibert purchased the land in 1816. I'm sure Liz is fully aware of all this historical stuff. He sold it later that year to his brother, Captain William Vibert. And William planned to retire from the sea and settle there with his family. But on his final voyage that year, his ship sank off Sandy Hook and he perished. And his ghost has been sighted in the house. And that's what got me interested in the story, because I had heard so many people talk about sighting the captain there. In 2019, when I was writing my book, The Sussex County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena book, my friend owned an antique consignment shop in the building, and she had reached out to me about paranormal activity that was occurring in the building. And it prompted me to write a chapter about it. Along with my friend's account, I had accumulated stories and evidence from other people in the community over the years. But before I actually had a chance to get our team in there, the landlord had upped her rent and she vacated the premises. But in 2020, I got a message from the new tenant who now owns Magnolia's Boutique. And she heard about the chapter on her building in my first book and about the paranormal team. And she wanted to tell me that she and her employees were experiencing activity and invited the Lady Ghostbusters in for an investigation.
Right.
Some great evidence was derived from that original investigation, and some team members went back for another one. Now, 2 of the team members normally got along and were on the same page until this second visit that they were there. They seemed to clash and disagree about everything. And when they finally connected with Spirit, they discovered that both brothers were present, Captain Bibbert and his brother Horace. And clearly, the brothers butted heads. And that's when you came in, Art. You were asked to go back with the team members. Not only did they feel the dissension between the brothers, but they felt there was something amiss and couldn't put their fingers quite onto it. And you were asked to go back there with them to see if you could get to the bottom of it. This very exciting event is a big reveal to that original chapter for anyone who has followed it since the release of that first book. Why don't you explain the details you unearthed that night, Art?
Okay, so of the 2 team members, I had gotten a call from one, and they said that the level of what they felt was kind of incredulous on the first visit there. And one of the team members basically had seen a lot that I have over the years. So kind of trusted if I saw a lot of what she did, it would really verify what she had seen. And she would probably know that she was on the right track. So what they did was they allowed me to do a complete dry read, like show up in the parking lot, give me absolutely nothing, like zero information about anything. They wanted to see what my dead read was from just getting out of the car, looking at the side entrance, looking at the overall house as I looked up and getting a feel for what I saw. And the first thing that I saw was, I said, this house has been repurposed many times over the course of its existence. I didn't know how old the house was. At this point, I didn't know the history of the place, but I thought it was very old. Little did I know that I believe it was the oldest house in Vernon. So, yeah. And so for me, I just knew that it had changed its facade time by whoever owned it to kind of turn it into something different from what it originally may have been. And I just got a sense of a lot of things being hidden, like hiding what was once done there. So the next group or people who may come to own it wouldn't really know what went down there, you know, kind of hiding history, like not disclosing, right? So I got a sense that there was a lot of that going on. That was just as me getting out of the car with Lizzie. So when we walk in, an immediate feel of oppression as soon as I walked in the side door was really heavy, really thick. So they had some workers that were there. It was already after session for the salon people. So these are the workers that had seen, heard lots of things. They wanted to see what I had a dead feeling on as soon as I walked in. So everybody was there, just quiet, not saying anything. I said hello to everybody and just walked around for the place. I noticed a lot of things looked like they had been rearranged, covered up, changed. So having been in houses that were that old before, I also knew a lot of history of why things are done like that. So I already had a sense of somebody very powerful owned this place. When you go to that level of detail to cover something up, it usually means you have a sense of power that you have that's threatened if somebody finds out what you're up to. Right? So a lot of powerful men have secret things that they do, and they do their best to keep things quiet. And also, you know, imagine, you know, when somebody's a property owner or a land baron, they also, if they're settling a place before it becomes officially settled, they're extremely powerful people. So it's not like in a day and age today where you have lots of population, somebody has a problem with the neighbor, they call the local cops, they get into a dispute, they write down a report, a complaint, and so on and so forth. Back then, the most powerful people owned the police, whatever was, you know, considered a police force, constable, you know, sheriff, authority figure, whatever. the higher up the food chain they were, the more anything they could make simply disappear. And this is not just true for this place, also like Burnbrae, same thing. So the more wealthy the people, and we're talking these are the day and ages long before income taxes. So when these people made money, they kept all of it. They had, by comparison, so much power because of the wealth that afforded them that power. It was beyond anybody able to touch them. So power is a very strong thing. So what had happened with the walking in and the feel that the place was changed over a bunch of times, I've definitely figured there had to have been a purpose to that. Like there was a practice or something going on. But as I walked through, I got this pit of sorrow, like somebody like reaching out, screaming out for help. Please help, release me from, my confines, my chains or whatever. So that's the sense I was getting, and it was strong. And I walked around, I looked and in the older houses, you realize there's lots of fireplaces because they didn't have heating other than, fireplaces and chimneys. So many of the older houses had many chimneys throughout a house because they're heating various rooms, various floors, various levels, and so on and so forth. So I was aware of just the sheer amount of fireplaces that were there. So it already showed that the house had to have been at least, 150, 200 years plus. And the thing was, I knew something was on the main floor with the chimneys and the fireplaces. So before I said anything about what I felt about them, I said, look, let's go into the basement. I'm getting pulled to the basement pretty strongly. So let's go downstairs. So you get on there, it's all stone foundation, right? Old school lime mortar. And I was getting the sense that there was some sort of bondage or shackling equipment somewhere that was once mounted to either the framework or the outer stonework at one point. So I checked all the corners, and I saw certain spots that looked like obvious spots. If you were going to hold somebody prisoner, these would be the places you would do so. So I'm starting to put together what I'm already thinking is happening here without saying something. So we go upstairs, and I talked to everybody on the main floor, and I said, all right, here's my first off shot at what I think is going on here. I think at some point this was part of the Underground Railroad, and they had slaves here on the premises. I think that they were possibly somebody bonded up in the basement, chained up, shackled, or whatever. I said, but I'll know a little bit more as I go through the house. I said, now I want everybody to check on the main floor. Go behind the chimneys, go behind the fireplaces, and see if there's panels that are there, if you can remove them, to see if you can find anything that would reveal like a hidden staircase. And sure enough, they were able to remove panels and find little sets of micro hidden stairs behind different fireplaces. And so what my vision of that was, I had first known about this, up at the House of the Seven Gables up in Salem. And the same thing, the Underground Railroad was to hide slaves. So when people would come, the slaves would hide behind the chimneys in a very narrow little corridor space. And it's, not for traveling. It's literally to hide their bodies, close a hatch, a doorway, and all of a sudden these people disappear. So they would give a high sign. Somebody would say, hey, there's people coming up the steps. Everybody disperse, get into your positions. People would just disappear behind the chimneys, get into their cubbies, lock them up. Gentle people would walk in and see, oh, the house has, no other people in it other than the people they're talking to, and they got away with this. Every house that had an Underground Railroad had this type of system that was disowned for hiding the slaves. Now, hiding the slaves was for two reasons. One was protecting them so they wouldn't be taken from whoever maybe your abolitionists were that were starting up at the time, that were, north versus south, because this was building early 1800s. You still got a good 50 plus years of slavery happening throughout the entire country. But the will against it was starting to increase in the north. But the thing is, you still have some diehard slave owners that would want to keep their slaves, and then to lie to everybody that they didn't have them by simply also stashing them behind the fireplaces to pretend that they didn't have them. And once the people were gone, they'd bring them back out. And indeed, we're still practicing slavery. So it was both. It was not just to hide them for the abolitionists. It was for the people who were the sympathizers that still wanted to utilize the slaves, labor. So in this case, this was definitely the slaves' labor being preserved. They were not abolitionists. So my sense was, all right, if this is this nefarious, there's got to be other stuff happening in the rest of the house. Let's go to the second floor. So we go up to the second floor. I'm getting a sense. Now I have a heavy sense of a man who's completely distraught with my presence there. Like angry, I got a big mouth. These guys go to their grave with these secrets thinking no one will ever find out. Somebody from the future like me comes along and be like, I'm not so fast. I can see what you did. And then all of a sudden their secret's no longer a secret. And then long after they lose their physical body, but their spirit is hanging out, they are now pretty angry and the house comes alive. Then what happens? Other clairvoyants, empaths, or seers come in, and then they see these spirits walking around, moving things, angry and whatnot. So we go up to the second floor, and we do this mini seance, and everybody in the room, including your two former team members there, spotted this big apparition standing behind me, clearly like if it could lash out at me, it would. I felt it. It was a presence of a man who was clearly, pissed off. So I'm just like, so what? Who cares? I have to say what I have the sense that there's a little girl in the basement that's been chained up and was crying out for help. So as the night went on, I got the sense that there was this favorite slave girl that was only allowed to come out when a certain man would come into the house. And what I'm getting, it was a high-up politician that would take the brand new railroad that was just put in Vernon by guess who? People affiliated with the Winans, right? So these people would come all the way up from Washington, come up through the rail system through Philadelphia, and come through the, western part of the state coming out of Pennsylvania. You got the whole, rail system from Pennsylvania that would extend, literally pop out at Warbass in Sussex and make its way right to Vernon. And all of a sudden, you have now a custom coach coming in for guys to come north and be like, oh, my favorite girl is going to be there. We're going to go pay her a visit. And this one girl was only allowed to see this one John, right? And then she was shackled up and no one else was to touch her. And I said, look, this was so pervasive and so bad for this girl. She's screaming out to me. She wrote somewhere in this house, help me, on some level, somewhere in the house. It's either on a stone, a piece of wood, a header, a doorway, or something. All of a sudden, everybody, all right, we got to go to the third floor. So now they got to go to the attic. Because,
hey, Art,
yeah.
Did they discover the hidden staircase that night that you were there, or was it after?
No, the night I was there, I said, look behind every possible fireplace and see what you find. And all of a sudden, that's when they uncovered them all. Now,
Well,
I do. Okay, go ahead.
I know that you have 4 pieces of video evidence that you took that night, and one of them happens to be when you found the wording on the wall. Let's go ahead and watch the first video, and you can explain what's going on in the video. So okay. Chris will run that Magnolia video 1.
Okay.
I had it ready, but I guess some came up. Hold on.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah.
So in the event that it is either decrypted or something, and you can't actually view the piece, what I could do. All right,
there it goes.
Right. Yeah, so
and I see all right in here too. Like if you back up, you can see it much better. And here,
There's an example here. Close. Kim said, close the door and look at the, I don't know, something while he was talking. So that changed the sign.
Yeah, that's it. The door is the Rosetta Stone.
And what was this one here?
Yeah, what is
And I see all writing here too. Like if you back up,
Yeah.
you can see it much better. And here,
There's an M
yep,
here.
and all right here too.
Scratching, probably with their nails, because what would they have?
See what I mean? If you back up,
Or something up here.
you can see
Something up
it.
here.
definitely nail or
It
something.
does. It definitely. It goes all the way to here.
Yep.
See it all the way
Yeah, what
across.
does that say?
I don't know, but this kind of looks like an IE.
Yeah.
Maybe
Or an M.
Yeah.
No, I was picking up Millie.
This looks like an S.
Yeah,
Yeah.
S. Yeah.
And then it goes up.
Oh.
SL.
Sharon?
No.
Slave.
Like
I just hear a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard a male voice.
Shane.
Yeah, in the corner here.
That's what I see. I see
Shane. Yes, S-H-A-N.
Yes.
Shane. Shane, Sarah, William. Kim said, close the door and look at the, I don't know, something while he was talking.
All right, so you got several names from that particular and that was the door that you guys discovered with the
Right, so that's the third floor in the attic. And now there's a particular wall that was there. There was a room that had been reconfigured a bunch of times, and originally there was an exterior entrance to that third floor from the back of the house, like a grand staircase that can only be accessed and exit in and out from the third floor, bypassing the internal part of the house. So what you have is messages being scribbled over this doorway because they're begging anybody who's coming into the door and who is literate, who can read, for help. So on different levels, they're putting out names of people, who has been in there as, basically calling cards for anybody coming up, realizing that, these girls are in trouble, but particularly this one. So it's basically what I would call a slavery prostitution operation going on of some sort, where the slave girls were used and then hidden, and then these powerful men would come up and see them, and then they would leave, and these girls were kind of stuck in this house. And I believe this was happening at a time where if the two brothers that owned the place, one was away at sea, wasn't aware of what the other one was doing, like a side joint that was going on, and it is such a period of time where powerful men would get virtually anything they want. They had the money, the means, and these girls had no choice but to comply. The sadness
to do with it, right?
Was immense. It was overwhelming. So now we did all this. We come back down. We try to contact, on the second floor, and then we go back down to the main floor, and we go sit around the entrance to the basement door. Now we're, talking about the reveals of different things, of events of the night so far. And all of a sudden, the basement door slams wide open in front of all of us. Just wide open, like somebody's busting out, slams, hits the wall. There's nobody there, but it just did it in front of like the whole bunch of us that were there. So that's when you've struck a nerve, and you're largely, uncovered something that was desperately trying to have been kept a secret for over 200 years. And at some point,
here's another piece of footage that we got from that night that you guys were there. It's Magnolia Video 2.
Right.
There you are, Art.
So one of these windows was, obviously they've all been boarded up over time and blocked in and whatnot. There was a message she tried pushing through to the outside. It was either on a stone or a piece of wood or something. She scribed it with something down here, probably a rock, long before your cement cellar. This whole thing was sagging, so these were put in modern times. The big main carrier beam, the whole house would be sagging otherwise. There's tree timbers down here, like stumps, which were used to support the house original, which is why you have unevenness. You can see this buckles and sagging.
Oh yeah, you can even see in that fireplace
Yeah,
over there.
yeah,
They
see,
have it. They have it.
There was more of this. They had more big tree timbers.
Yeah, and in there you can see they jousted it up too.
Yeah, but these are all
newer.
These are all newer. These are within the last 100 years. But
You guys felt something in that corner too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you getting any name art?
I'm getting a letter. I'm getting a letter J. I'm not sure if it's or if it's part of an initial. I want to see an inscription. I want to see something, but it would be it was out of desperation. Desperation would kind of be. You have stone here. We have like desperate. There's so one of these windows.
So it seems to frozen there.
Oh.
Was that down in the basement when you were
yeah.
looking around originally for the writing?
Obviously, they've all been boarded up over time and blocked in and whatnot. There was a message she tried pushing through to the outside. It was either on a stone or a piece of wood or something.
Yeah, it looks like it just relooped.
Something down here, probably
So essentially, yeah, that was my first trip into the basement, and from that point forward, I wanted to then go out to the second floor and then eventually the third floor and try to put together a synopsis of timing of events and things that I was seeing that were sort of happened at a certain point in time.
Well, at that point in time, you clearly were saying stone or wood, and then you ultimately ended up finding out that it was wood. We do have Magnolia Video 3. I'm not exactly sure what it's depicting, but let's watch it and see Magnolia Video 3, see exactly what's going on there. And you can tell the listening audience what's going on in that video. He's getting it set up for you.
Let's see.
Because we have 4 from that particular night.
Right.
At different points in time.
I'm not sure.
I know the internet is acting funny, but
yeah, I mean,
he'll eventually get it up.
It's him.
It's his energy.
Yeah, so usually with reveals, right? Like this happens up at the mansion more times than not. If there's something of significance that I've uncovered, usually I get, paranormal interference. I get, electronic manipulation. It could be, for your phone, for your computer, for your recorder.
Well, clearly that's what's happening right now.
So it's the fact that, I have a big mouth and I'm uncovering stuff that people don't want to have seen or put out there. If they can dabble and shut you down, they'll do it. Because
we're getting it out there no matter what.
Yeah, and the thing is, evidence is not even necessary for stuff that exists. It's just to prove to people that you saw something, to some extent. But evidence doesn't, decrease something having happened or not. The things that have actually happened did, whether they're proven or not.
It won't let me play it for some reason, and I click on it.
Yeah,
it skips to the next one. So
shocking.
All right, try number 4, and then we can always go back to 3. See if it comes up. Wow, isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
You can expect that.
Well, just so Spirit knows, it's actually on my YouTube channel already. So them stopping it from getting onto this show is not going to stop people from seeing it. So there you have it.
Usually what's done is trying to take away any of my credibility. And
not going to happen.
it's not going to work, but they try.
No. Yeah.
So,
exactly.
I mean, also when I've had reveals of things my researcher here, Lizzie, was able to forensically look up many of the things I had seen in the past and actually have it proven just by, recorded history, what little there was of said places we visited.
Mhm.
But usually stuff I find.
No, that's not
No.
it. No.
Okay, then I don't see another. Okay. I don't see it.
You mean you can't get it to come up? Is that what you're saying? Because
Yeah.
if you look in the original message,
Because I see the clip, but it won't let me play it. So
it won't let you
hold on,
play
let
it.
me-
All right. Well, the
let me try.
ultimately what ended up happening was that you unearthed the staircase and you unearthed the writing on that wood door. It was a door, right? And revealed that the one brother was doing the wrong thing and the good brother wanted to stop it, but that's why the mediums were flashing that particular evening.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably, as the one guy who resided in the place while the other one was out at sea, made offers from powerful people that, hey, you got a big house here. We could do a lot of painting with this.
Right.
And if you have the ability to have space on the inside where you can hide people, and all of a sudden a whole cottage industry could happen out of thin air. And if not the oldest house, one of the oldest houses in Vernon before the whole place settled. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to see the one house that all the activity is going on when there's nothing else around it. And you come by railroad, it's like, this is your stop, Senator.
Gotcha. Well, the one team member who connected with the mean brother that night actually was injured that night by the spirit. She was both scratched and bruised.
Yep.
So, and I think she even took pictures of her bruises because it was just so amazing that it happened. It was kind of like she felt it and she screamed, and they were like, "What happened?" And then looked at it and found the markings.
Yeah. So a lot of what she was feeling, she wanted me to corroborate, and as much as I uncovered certain things, definitely corroborated much of what she had already seen. So that much was corroborated, was good. You could certainly give credence to like her story, but the development, usually where she would start on a story, I would finish out the rest of the details on it, and I would see a whole lot more. So, and very often in a place like this, the more you delve, the more you look, the more you realize just how bad things really got over whatever period of time. And there's always some victim involved. And in this case, it probably was more than one. But there was a favorite girl. She was definitely trapped and, scratching things. And then the fact that if she was a slave girl, the fact that she's even literate means she had good raising of some sort where they educated her to such an extent. Because most people at the time were not literate. So for you to be literate, able to read and write, means somebody took the time to teach it to you, which means they valued you a lot in order to give you that education, because most people were kept in the dark. Most people, couldn't even sign their name, let alone write or read something.
Well, Sussex County experienced the advent of railroads after the Civil War ended, and the railroads were well established in the area by 1895. One of the lines ran past the shops at Lafayette and Lafayette, New Jersey. Rural New Jersey back then had its fair share of social ills, to include murders, rapes, assaults, batteries, robberies, assorted misdemeanors, not to mention railroad-related deaths, industrial and agricultural machinery-related accidents, diseases, and childhood complications. The Lady Ghostbuster team investigated the Diva dog in January 2020. That's the next picture of the outside building, Chris, that you had put up. There you go. I received 2 captivating videos from the store owner depicting activities she spoke of happening in her shop she and her employees had been experiencing since 2018. Show that first video with the little dog in it that you had put up accidentally. That's the first video she had sent me. Chris. You have to take the picture down, though.
Are you really growing at?
Wow.
Right? See?
Wow.
There's no fooling the dogs.
No.
See?
Yep.
Tell me that's not crazy. Yeah. This kid's okay. It's okay.
Now she happened to get it on video that particular time, but this happened regularly. She would bring the dogs into her shop, and they would start growling and barking at something that wasn't even there. Then she had sent me the video of the bell ringing, so you can put that one up, Chris. The next one with the bell ringing comes right after the dogs, which we knew about. Art, we had heard our own bell ringing that night, but she had sent it to me originally when she said, we have this going on, this bell on this door. There you go. Starts ringing randomly, and there's no draft or anything. And she had another investigative team in earlier, and she had said, I would love it if you guys had come. And so you were the medium present for the investigation, and you had immediately pointed out the activity on the outside. You sensed it immediately. Why don't you explain about the outside?
Well, from what I was seeing, the activity, it's a frozen piece of time, I would say, is there's people walking in a certain direction, walking around, and it's residual. What I was getting was like a residual, habitual thing. And for me, it was like there must have been like a railroad station or something, either here or close by. There's people milling about. So that's the sense that I got, that this location at one point was bustling, right? So you would have, people waiting to get on the train, get off the train, greet people coming in, seeing people off, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So I really got the sense that there was a lot of activity, but I also got the sense of a guy and a girl, a type of relationship where
young kids. They were about like 16 and 17 years old. We have video of us trying to debunk the bell. So let's show that before you go into the story about Sarah and Daniel. Show those videos, Chris. Why don't you have the bell ringing and then Art actually trying to debunk it and showing that there was no interference. It's the next set of videos that we have.
So they always move even when they push on the doors. That is a trigger and a half. Move it. They just move on their own. Yep. That's interesting.
Well, it's the K2 is.
So they always move even when they push on the doors.
That is a trigger and a half.
Look at that moving.
They just move on their own. Yep. That's interesting.
Well, it's the K2 is.
So they always move even when they push on the doors.
That is a trigger and a half.
Hey, Chris, move on to the next one. That was when we first saw the bell moving.
Right.
The K2 is.
The K2 was going nuts too at the same time.
Right.
And it's still moving.
Oh yeah, well, it's not shutting up. Still taking customers.
Look, it's still moving. It should have stopped already by now.
It's ridiculous.
And it's still moving.
Oh yeah, well, it's not shutting up. Still taking customers.
Okay, go on to 3 now, Chris.
It's ridiculous.
Because this went on for a period of time. It continued to move. And then there was like a third one that we had.
Yeah.
Picking up. So it's like just the back ones are really moving and the front one isn't. But look, it almost seems like it's picking up.
Yeah. Look at it.
One of those
yeah, it should have stopped already.
It should have totally stopped.
That's crazy.
And they will start on their own. Like I do have a video of the girl who works for me who said
nobody had been in the store for half an hour. There was nobody in the building. It was a nice summer day, and she just said they started moving on their own. She took a video of it because it freaked her out.
Well, it was moving when we were here earlier.
Just something over here.
Picking up. So it's like just the back ones.
All right. So then Chris put the last one on because it's when Art goes over there with his flame to try and see if there's a draft to debunk it.
So Art's going to check a flame on there and see if there's a draft that we've missed.
Not really.
No, it's not moving. None at all. It's steady.
No.
No draft.
Go up closer to the bell that's moving.
Nope, no draft. Somebody's moving it. Look at this.
Yeah, it's picking up. It's picking up. Mm-hmm.
And it would go faster, and it would go slower, and it would go faster and slower. It kind of was just moving on its own.
Art's going to check a flame on there and see if there's a draft that we've missed.
All right, so you could pull that down, Chris. So that was one of the things that happened to us that night. But then, like you had said, we connected with spirit. We connected the spirit of a young girl named Sarah and a young man named Daniel. They were like 16 or 17 years old. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what happened with that?
So I think my sense of it was kids young at a train station, there's got to be, kind of a romantic involvement, I would say. So I also had a sense of there was something that the girl was involved in, something possibly against her will, from what I'm trying to remember a little bit.
Yeah, what we had discovered was that they had come from somewhere because they were going to travel to New York City, and there was a stopover there wherever the railroad was near the Lafayette shops. Obviously, the shops weren't there at the time; it was part of the railroad, and they were confronted by some men that said that they had done something or stole something or whatever, and accused them of doing this to hold them there, and ultimately ended up making right.
So, right in the area, you had Warbass Junction, where you had the changing of trains and directions, and you had the beginning of a rail system that would take you all the way across from Sussex straight to the waterfront, Liberty State Park and Jersey City. And of course, everybody would, at that point take like a ferry to get to New York. So your railway, travelers would come from the origins of the rail lines in Pennsylvania, end up in Sussex, take the right turn at Warbass, and go to the city for various reasons. I think two kids that were looking to, get out on their own and do something probably against their parents' will were sucked into something by some nefarious adults. And not good would come of it, especially if the girl was, attractive and seen as an asset of some sort by some roving guy or group of men. So it's kind of sad, predators that you're going forensically back, possibly 200 years or whatever, and you get to see things happen because their energy of whatever happened is residual and it's left in the area, and it just repeats itself. So somebody like me will come along and see it.
We had determined that she was ultimately sold into prostitution from that point on, and Daniel was forced into farm labor. And at one point on the SLS camera, we had a lot of SLS interaction, which is on the camera, you would see this stick figure that there was nothing there but this stick figure. And at one point we actually had her trying to show us her being attacked, but we actually have some footage, SLS footage of our interaction with those spirits, if Chris wants to play that for us.
Right.
Oh, yeah. My name is Brittany.
I'm so glad you took that out.
Laurel. I'm Laurel. Hi.
I'm Eleanor.
I'm Liz.
Francesca and Russ.
We're here to say hi.
Any particular reason why you call him Adam?
Last time they were here, they asked his name.
Oh,
and he said Adam.
Okay. And that's Andrew in the back over there.
And it ended up not being Adam because somewhere along the lines we ended up finding out that it was Daniel and Sarah. I think it was Art that came up with the names Daniel and Sarah, which led us to go, because of the modern technology at your fingertips, we were able to go online and Google it to see if we could come up with names of Daniel and Sarah located in that area. And we ended up finding their graves. We ended up locating their graves across the street in the Lafayette Cemetery.
Yeah, so it's kind of awful when you're onto something and you really think that you're right, but you're kind of hoping that you're not. You're kind of hoping that somebody's feeding you a story that is either embellished or not altogether true. But when you start to see the forensics, people actually buried, and all of a sudden you're seeing their ultimate demise and their history of what has happened to them is turning out to really having happened. It's rough to deal with things that you're reliving, and it's not a story. That it's an event that actually happened, and it's their story of truth. Unresolved, unjustified, unadjudicated. Hundreds of years later, unsolved, and highwaymen getting away with what they did, and abducting, selling, prostitution and trafficking were huge business back then. And you
don't think about it. You think about history, you want to learn about the history, but you don't realize all about those terrible things that happen.
Yeah, largely history is remembered by what was most written about as to, things to be believable, but people in a more, I guess, affluent area, you wouldn't have the predilection to think that these things would actually happen because, it's too much of a higher income, highfalutin area that this type of thing wouldn't be, regular everyday, events, but they actually were. The thing is, even the stuff that you would consider bad that you may have heard happen down south still happened up north. It's just it was hidden more while it was still not officially outlawed. Don't forget, slavery and human trafficking and everything largely wasn't officially outlawed till Lincoln. So
Chris is going to show us the graves that we discovered because we ended up finding them online, and then Brittany and I went back after the fact into the Lafayette Cemetery. We ended up finding their gravestones, which was interesting. Pretty interesting. And we had gone there to go looking for the gravestones of another investigation, and just happened upon. It was like we were led by feathers to Daniel and Sarah and their child, because they did have a child together as well,
right?
Which was pretty interesting. That's the gravestone. Hey, I have a reader named Richard Schneider who sent me some crazy photographs, Art, that he took of a herd of deer while out walking with his dog one early evening. And this guy loves wildlife photos, and he took a succession of photos. And when he looked at them later, something popped up. Can I show you the photos and see what you make of them?
Sure. All
right, Chris, run the pictures slowly in the order that I numbered them, please. And Art, why don't you have a look at them? This is a zoom in of the picture he was taking. And when I first looked at them, I was like, what the heck is that shit? Go ahead. Keep on going, Chris. Just a random herd of deer out on this property when he was with his dog. Keep going.
Right.
There you go. There they are again. And it shows up in this one picture. And then when you go to the last picture, it's not there. So there they are again in another position. Now stop. Do you see anything in that picture?
Yeah, I'm getting straight up. I have a image of something coming up either right around where the tree is, over the center of a deer, like either.
All right, go to the next picture because I zoomed in on it, Chris. Look at that. Do you see that thing?
Well, that's exactly what I'm looking at. It's the face.
Yeah. Why don't you? I think I even brought it even closer in the next picture, Chris.
That's crazy.
There you go. Look at that.
Oh,
It's a face.
Yeah.
It freaked the guy out because he was like, it looks like a leprechaun. I'm never going back there with my dog again. And I just
the Green Man.
like a little man. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it looks like the Green Man.
So it looks like some sort of land spirit that is with them, like traveling with them or at this particular location where they're actually at. So in my Alaskan Indian vernacular, we have something called an acoustica, which is a land spirit that likes to take the shape of different animals, but rarely was seen by itself. But it's something that is not living. Essentially, it's a spirit that likes to show itself from time to time just to see who's awake.
Yeah, because when you go to the next picture, which Chris can put up, when you go to the next picture, there's nothing there. It's gone. That's the picture that came directly after the one with the little guy in it. So he immediately pictured it and described it as a leprechaun. He said it was a leprechaun. But I just figured it was some sort of apparition. You can go back to the apparition again, Chris, picture before, but it was just really perplexing that this thing just popped up like that. It freaked the guy out, that's for sure.
I would be freaked out too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's definitely making its, appearance known.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is with the auspices of somebody seeing it deliberately. Anytime a spirit wants to reveal itself, it's trying to establish a communication with somebody who is able to see them. And then, and all of a sudden it's gone. Yeah. It's there.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then it'll be gone in the next so many frames because it doesn't want to be seen. It's like, all right, did you see me? All right. Who out of you just saw me?
Well, they usually say when you're out on certain things, you should take pictures in successions of like 3, because oftentimes you'll have something show up in that second picture and not in the first or third, which I found too when I've gone on cemetery hunts. You kind of like just take random pictures and then you'll find things in the middle of photos that you didn't expect.
Right.
So,
yeah. So, I mean, and those reveals are with design, right?
Right.
So, like earlier, like when we talked about, the burn bray, this spirit, which I clearly know I've brought back from graveyard so many times, that terrifying FLIR image was the first time anything of that intensity had ever been seen on any paranormal show or investigation anywhere. I've seen lots of things in so many shows, but nothing that vivid in a heat signature on a FLIR image that was that absolutely just. I showed that to Chip Coffey. He was, he had done shows up at the mansion, and all that, and told him of different experiences I had there. And he liked to relegate some of the pictures that I had of these ectoplasms, astral mists and whatnot. And he was like, oh, that's pareidolia. And here he used that term to try to tamp down and dismiss that, here I am.
Yeah.
The old ink blot test. Oh, yeah. What do you see here? Oh, I see a bat flying, or I see this, or I see that. And that you matrix with your mind things that you fantasize that are there. Meanwhile, I got a FLIR image clearly of a demonic something or other holding the woman down. There's no
pareidolia.
Yeah, pareidolia. Yeah, that's great. So for me, I get that claim thrown at me quite a bit. And it's like, what? I'm not trying to prove to anybody anything. Right. I know what I've seen. I know what I've seen. If you want to get educated, I can tell you what I know, and I can tell you what I've experienced. Whether you believe it or not is not my concern.
Exactly. I totally agree with you 100%.
Things that exist do not need your approval.
Right. I totally agree with you 100%. Yeah. Well, I hate to say it, guys. We are running out of time. It's well over our hour. But I want to thank you so much for sharing your night with us. I'm so glad you could join me this evening. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you'll come back again with me sometime.
It was fun.
I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, there's so many things, and realistic things that have happened. But all I can say is, for anybody watching, Don't be ashamed of your abilities. Don't be ashamed of explaining the things that you've seen for fear of being, ridiculed or intimidated by other people who would simply use it as a tool to try to bring you down. Real things are out there, and the more people wake up, to what's actually going on, the more they'll have a better understanding of their surroundings, history, possibly clues that'll lead into future events, things of that nature. Use every sense you got. As human beings, we have 11. Most people only utilize 5. Some utilize 6. Some utilize 7. I utilize 8, sometimes 9, but the other 2.5, still dormant. We're still evolving as a species. If you can take a look around and imagine we're evolving at all.
True.
Your TV's news every day might tell you otherwise, but we are still evolving as a creature. So I'm just
thank you so much.
Trying to help.
I really appreciate it. I take you in the highest regard. I really do. I have
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys, and you have a good night.
You too. All right.
And thank you, Techie Chris. We couldn't do it without you. If any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find the links to them on my website, author.eleanorwagner.com. I read about the history of the town and location, add the paranormal story to the mix, and finish it off with photos and evidence. And if you're looking for some protection from ghostly attachments, the Lady Ghostbuster unisex bracelet is the perfect thing. This gorgeous protective gemstone bracelet with sterling silver ghost charm is the perfect fix. Offered in a collaboration with Zen Jewels by Zen Jen, you can find the link for this gorgeous piece at my website, author.eleanorwagner.com, under the merchandise tab. Don't go into a haunted building unprotected. Arm yourself with the Lady Ghostbuster bracelet by Zen Jewels. Viewers, tune in on May 26th when Gwendolyn Purcell and J. Charlie Larson from the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective and the Central Pennsylvania Paranormal Research Association will join us for some ghostly gab. Until then, have a good night.
I hope you've enjoyed this little journey down my own personal nightmare alley. If you're one of those people who experiences the paranormal and has stories of your own you've been filing away over the years, I want to hear about them. And if you're a part of a paranormal investigative team, even better. I'd love to have you on my show. Got a questionable photo? Send it in. Would love to have an open discussion here amongst the professionals. Reach out to me at authoreleanorwagner@gmail.com. Enjoy our soundtrack music, Headless Horseman by Alexander Nakarada, promoted by freestockmusic.com. And remember, no ghost story is better than a real-life ghost story. Until we meet again, make sure you're creeping it real.